What is going on, guys? And welcome back to iCoach Nutrition Radio. So when you think about macros, when you think about macronutrients, you think about protein, fat, and carbohydrates, right? Those are the three macronutrients, right? When you think about the needs of each one of those, we're going to break down each one so that way you know how many grams of protein you need per day, how many grams of fat you need per day, and how many grams of carbohydrates you need per day. First, we're going to go into today, right? And what we're going to cover in this podcast is your carbohydrate needs, right? So the best way to think about carbohydrates is carbohydrates are the equivalent to fuel, right? Fuel for your gas tank, right? In your car, right? Unless you drive an electric vehicle there, in which you're now talking about maybe a charging station. But let's talk about regular cars here, not electric cars. All right. Let's talk about the gas, right? Gas prices right now are through the freaking roof, right? So you're hoping that you don't have to travel as far here. You're thinking that you don't need as many carbohydrates, if you will, right now. But the reality of it is when you think about your carbohydrate needs, right? People that are more active are going to need more carbohydrates. People that are more sedentary are going to need less carbohydrates. The problem with America right now, right, and this obesity epidemic that we're living in is that most people, right, are very sedentary, and most people overconsume carbohydrates, right? So that's a problem, right? If you're consuming way more fuel than your body needs, then there's going to be a storage mechanism that's going on there, right? i.e., that's why a lot of people are overweight, right? They have way too much body fat on them. They're obese, right? And so you have to start to understand your carbohydrate needs, right? You have to start to understand your overall calorie needs, right? But I'd argue that a lot of these overeating, this overconsumption of calories is in the form of carbohydrates, right? It's not that carbs are bad or that you shouldn't eat carbs, or that you should avoid carbs or minimize carbs. It's that you should really start to understand, I either need to start getting more active, right? Which would be recommended, right? We want to live an active lifestyle. We don't want to be sedentary, right? We don't want to just be sitting on a desk on our computer all day, right? Never getting out, never walking, never exercising, right? We want to be more active. And so that would be the first encouragement is let's get you more active, right? Then you don't have to change anything with your carbohydrates. Let's get you more active to the point where they're meeting the demands of how many carbohydrates your body actually needs, right? Or we've got to get you to understand that, hey, if you're just not going to be more active and if you're just going to live a sedentary lifestyle, well, then you've got to bring down the amount of carbohydrates that you're consuming because you just don't need it, right? For example, like if I was going to have you drive to your nearest grocery store, you're going to need a lot less gas, right? In comparison to you taking a road trip across the United States, right? And so it's the same thing here with a workout. If you're somebody that's extremely sedentary, you're not going to need that many carbohydrates, right? Whereas if I'm talking about let's say a marathon runner, they're going to need a lot more carbohydrates to fuel their lifestyle. Right? So the big takeaway here is that the more active you are, the more carbohydrates you're going to need. The less active you are, the more sedentary you are, the less carbohydrates you're going to need. Okay. So when we start to think about this and break this down, generally speaking, when I think about clients and people that I'm giving recommendations to, I like to present what's referenced as the iCoach plate, right? The iCoach plate. And so when we think about a plate, that would be basically building out your meal, every meal that you eat, the majority of meals that you eat in this format, which can help with portion sizes. So essentially a quarter of your plate would be protein, a quarter of your plate would be carbohydrates, and then half of your plate would be color, meaning vegetables or fruits or a combination of both. And yes, I know that vegetables and fruits are carbohydrates as well, right? But when we think about grains, right, and starches, those are going to typically have a lot more carbohydrates in them in comparison to vegetables and fruits, okay? Also, not to mention, a lot of the times with the vegetables and fruits, they're going to be a lot less calories in comparison to the starches and grains per serving, all right? So that's generally speaking a great way for you to be able to think about, hey, when I'm building out my plates, right, what do my plates look like? Am I filling up half my plate with carbohydrates, right? Or my whole plate with carbohydrates? And if so, I need to reduce that down to a place where I'm filling up about a quarter of my plate with carbohydrates. Again, if you're super, super active, maybe you're a competitor, you're somebody that is an athlete, right? And you're playing whatever high school, college, professional sports, or you are a CrossFit athlete, or you are, training for, Ironmans, or you're a marathon runner or whatever, then your carbohydrate need is now going to come up to a third of your plate, or even half of your plate, right? Or even more, right? But if you're somebody that is, just generally speaking, like me, for example, that just works out maybe 3 to 5 days a week for an hour, I'm just generally trying to prioritize my health. I'm not competing in anything. That's that quarter plate carbohydrate goal. That's a good reference point there for you, right? What that looks like, if you're thinking about like a hand portion there, if I was to make like a cup hand of carbohydrates, right, that would essentially for males be about 2 cup hands of carbohydrates, and for females typically 1 cup hand of carbohydrate. Okay, what that could also present would be like 2 cups of whatever the carbohydrate source is for men, 1 cup of carbohydrate source for the women there. Right. When we're thinking about, how many grams of carbohydrates is that typically I'm shooting for about 40 to 60 grams of carbohydrates for men, and about 20 to 30 grams of carbohydrates per meal for women. Right. And again, this is generally speaking, because there's a lot of women out there that are way more active than men, and they need a lot more carbohydrates than this, sedentary man would need. Right. So this all is individualized to you, and don't take these as like exact recommendation here, because it is going to need to be individualized to you, and these are just general recommendations. But that general piece of how to build out your plate in an iCoach plate, that's a good reference point for most people, right? Especially if you're just general population and you're somebody that's looking to lose weight and learn how to lose weight and be able to actually keep it off. If you're somebody that's just really trying to learn how to live a healthy lifestyle that's actually sustainable for the rest of your life, that's a great recommendation there for you. Okay. But the big piece here is thinking to yourself that the more, treat and envision and think about carbohydrates in comparison to gas and fuel, right? And remember that the longer the distance, the more that you travel, right? In a car, the more gas that you're going to need, right? No different than with your carbohydrates. Carbs are fuel, right? Carbohydrates are the gas to your car, right? They're the fuel to your body, right? So the more active you are, the more carbohydrates you're going to need. The less active you are, right? The less, essentially the more sedentary you are, the less carbohydrates you're going to need. All right. So keeping this one super short, super simple, getting right to the point. How many carbohydrates do you need per day? Again, it depends on the person. It depends on your needs. It depends on your goals, right? But generally speaking, the more active you are, the more carbohydrates you need, AKA the more fuel you're going to need, right, to help you to perform and recover. And the more sedentary you are, the less carbohydrates you're going to need to be able to perform and recover. Guys, hope this helps. Hope this simplifies carbohydrates and helping you to know what your needs are and how many you should be consuming per meal and on a daily basis. And if you have any questions at all, be sure to drop them in the comments below. Shoot me a message there on Coach Justin Murphy on Instagram. That's definitely where I'm most active on social media. And other than that, mentioned this in the last podcast, but would love some more podcast topic ideas. Feel free to shoot me some of those if you have anything you want me to cover more in depth, or if there's any podcast that I've done that you would like me to dive in and go deeper in. But other than that, thank you so much for listening in today. Thank you for taking the time. I appreciate you so much. Hope everyone had an amazing Memorial Day weekend. Thank you to all who have served our great country. I appreciate you and the sacrifice that you have made. And any of your family, any of your friends, coworkers, that have paid the ultimate sacrifice. I appreciate y'all so much for allowing me to be able to do what I do and live in a country and have the freedoms that we do. I'm forever grateful for that. So go out, thank a veteran today. Anybody that that's served in the military and has put in that time, be sure to show your gratitude for them. So hope everyone had an amazing Memorial Day weekend. And until next time, thanks guys.